We have 8 o'clock, sir.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of October 13th, 2022 Boards of Directors Study Session. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll call, please?
Yes. Director Brett Eccles,
Here.
Dr. Arthur Perry,
Here.
Secretary Arlene Schaefer,
Here.
President Mike Schaefer,
Here.
President Robert Uden.
Here. Do we have any public comments?
No, Mr. President.
Seeing none, then we'll go on to the items of study. And the first item will be the receive and file September 2022 Code Enforcement Officers Report. David.
Good morning, President, members of the board. My report for the month of September. This report summarizes major points for 3 ordinance enforcement topics covering scavenging, graffiti, and trash container enforcement. For the month of September, the interim code enforcement officer focused his efforts on patrols in various parts of the community. The goal is to identify and deter instances of scavenging and residential trash carts left within the public view. In the month of September, the district saw a number of complaints filed with the CMSD interim code enforcement staff regarding scavenging activity in the city. As with most scavenging complaints, the alleged violations take place in the early morning hours. In order to address these resident concerns, the interim code enforcement officer is patrolling the streets by 6:30 a.m. Included below are instances of scavenging that were detected while the officer was investigating specific complaints. The month of September, I had interaction with one scavenger. That was on Albert Place, kind of a strange place. But it seems like scavenging activity is been going down. I've been hitting all the various hotspots. Director Schaefer, mentioned the alley behind his workplace on Baker and Harbor area. Been very slow. So we did have some stuff printed out that I could hand out if I catch people scavenging, basically like a first warning. And then after that, we would, go to a citation from there. I have some samples here to show you guys.
Great. Thank you. Are these to keep or just look at?
Yeah, you can pass them down when you finish your.
Did they only issue you 2?
They just cut those this morning so that I could give you a sample.
Sorry.
Any questions about scavenging right now?
I just want to thank you. And it seems like that's at least 2 months in a row that the scavenging at least has been like probably under 6, 7, right?
Correct.
So, and your patrols are the same, like you said, so.
I'm continuing, the hot areas, Eldon and that area on Wednesdays.
Yep.
I never really caught that specific individual on Tuesdays, just a little further south.
Right.
But I'm still gonna patrol those areas and have my presence known,
Yeah.
And this particular individual that I did speak to was the first contact that I've ever seen her before. So
Presence known, as all of us parents know, when we're in front of our kids are less like shenanigan. When we're not there, they'll do anything. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Trash container enforcement. In the month of September, there were a few customer complaints reported to the headquarters regarding trash carts in public view. The following a list of locations where trash cart violations were found and addressed by the courtesy notice process. Month of September, 113 violation notices were handed out. The list of streets and the number of violations on that street. Any questions about trash carts in public view? No cases of graffiti reported in the month of September. And the final page is just scavenging contact. It was a Wednesday. Any further questions from there?
Does the city code enforcement officer cooperate in these processes?
They, they do handle, and if complaints come into their office, Renee will forward that over to me right away. As far as trash enforcement, if it comes to them, they're forwarding it to me.
Because they have criteria for multifamily homes and whatnot.
Correct.
Are they actively getting the multifamily or, oh, I guess, yeah, multifamily homes in compliance?
I mean, I did have a complaint on Jeffrey, which is, just right here off of Paularino. It's kind of in a little section of apartments in between Paularino and Baker. I think they've all been exempted because they're multifamily apartment complexes. So I did have a complaint of, people leaving them out on the street and sidewalk. And so I tagged those, but yeah, I think they're on top of their, multifamilies.
Yep, okay.
And again, if it's something that falls under my jurisdiction, that they forward it over to me right away.
And I think I've asked the question before, but maybe you and I can talk offline. I walk a lot in the city, I walk a lot in there doesn't seem to be many people that leave their carts out along this, along the driveway. What are our requirements for them to keep them out of public view?
And that's the code. I mean, it says, and it reads, of course, there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And I think we've had this conversation and I've had with Mark, if it's up, next to their garage and there hasn't been complaints.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's taking it away from the street. It's not on the sidewalk. And there is a plane kind of looking at, as far as long as it's behind that plane. We're, gonna, let them, get away with that. In other words, basically, if it comes up to where people are complaining about that, then I address those issues. And
Okay, thank you, David. I think you're doing a good job.
thank you.
David, I had something to say. I think truthfully that was great that CR&R came through on the telephone to different people when they were going to be delayed and told them again where to put the cart and so forth. I think that communication is needed. And so I really approve that.
Well, thank you very much.
Does that conclude your report, David?
That concludes my report. Any further questions?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a great day. You too.
You too.
Okay, the next item of study is 2022 missed pickup.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a standard report requested by the Board of Directors to be informed of the number of missed collections per month. In the month of September, we did experience 178 missed collections. I do want to note that over half of those collections did occur in one particular neighborhood on Republic Avenue, Grove Place, and Linden Place, where all the homes in those neighborhoods were missed, but they were picked up, I believe, the next day. Primary causes of the delays again are truck breakdowns, some drivers on leave, but there's also, I also wanted to mention some of the reasons for the missed collection is some residents are not putting their carts out on time, or they will put it someplace where the carts can't be picked up. Maybe they're too close to a car and the driver is reluctant to pick up the car because he doesn't want to damage the vehicle. So those are some of the reasons as well. But if you put it in all in perspective, the 178 missed collections, while we've mentioned this before the board, it's impossible to get a zero missed collections. That's impossible, but we can still improve on that number. But again, if you put it in perspective of the 178 missed collections, it's less than 1% of over 23,000 homes that we collect on a monthly basis. But we're still communicating with CNR when we get those complaints. We immediately respond to CNR and we follow up with CNR to make sure those homes are picked up. So if you have any questions, Nabila, my staff's here, and then CNR is here to answer any questions as well.
Brett?
Thank you, Mr. President. So for the room and Scott, whoever can best address, I've got to, I've asked this, I think, a long time ago, and I know the answer, but pre-COVID, I mean, missed pickups will never be zero. We all agree, but I think it was answered that they were very rare. I mean, numbers of complaints about that. Am I correct?
Well, number it was rare because in all honesty, we really weren't keeping the data on it, and
Right.
CNR was keeping that data. The staff wasn't. So in all honesty, I don't really know what those numbers are. We know it's not zero, but
Right.
we're assuming it was fewer than we're experiencing today.
Maybe at some point, if you do have that data, would love to see that because and which leads me to my next question. I'm a trend person. I like to see things improve and we can tell our constituents, hey, it's improving. You know, which leads me to this is it seems like the last 2 months had significant spikes. You know, I don't know what the trend, is there any specific reason for the last 2 months or?
But Julie will respond to that.
Thank you.
Morning. Let me address the first question. I came to CR&R during COVID, so I don't know the trend either, but we do have system reports. So let me gather that data. I can run the reports again if they called and reported it. Every phone call we get, we require the customer service rep to put in the ticket for whatever the action is. So let us gather a few years of data prior to COVID, because I would be curious as well, because I don't know what that number is. Secondly, yes, the last 2 months have been very challenging. I know I've stood here and said this before, but we continue to experience labor issues. For the most part, it hasn't been as many trucks, and I will address the trucks in a second. But our owners actually just this week, they're trying to come up with the numbers. So some of our operations are union, some are non-union. So we're kind of half and half. But for the most part, most haulers in Orange County are union, and Teamsters 396 is the union agency that all the haulers use. And through current negotiations that we went through, Waste Management's went through, Republicans went through, they're all negotiating the same rate, which I actually like, because I feel in that case, it's a level playing field as part of what the rate is. However, that being said, in the areas that we are non-union, our owners are looking at possibly paying $2 to $3 over labor market price to do something to attract folks that want to come work in the trash industry. We continue to struggle competing with Amazon, UPS, FedEx, any logistics company. We continue to compete with that similar workforce. So, you know, as I've mentioned before, when I started, I think we had 1 recruiter. We have now a director of recruiting and 4 recruiting, and that is the main focus, is hiring drivers. And so we're trying to look at other things. We're looking at job fairs. We're looking at partnering with other community colleges that maybe have some vocational to see if we can't do that. But I will tell you, the last couple months have primarily been labor shortage. And I think what we're seeing is, and particularly Mondays and Fridays, I think the guys and women, we do have a couple women drivers, they're tired. And so those that are here, they're working a lot of overtime. And so we are experiencing some call outs on Mondays and Fridays, which I get it. So as far as truck issues, I will report, we had committed to the district that we were going to put in 4 new vehicles. And Mr. Ronenberg, Cliff, had shared with me on Monday that final touches are being put on the trucks this weekend. So the 2 will be in operation next week. And then of course, staff, I'll send you the vehicle numbers and VIN stuff that we submit to the district with that data. So as far as trucks, and I believe when we switch those, and I think we'll get into it, and my apologies, Scott, I don't know if it's that specific in the staff report, but we did negotiating, talking about average vehicle age to match Newport, which would be no average vehicle older than 7 years. So we are under that, well under that, with adding those 2 new trucks. So that's a good thing.
Great. One more question while I have you. So you have union, non-union. How's that work? And how's the union like that?
You know, it's they try. I mean, they are obviously trying to lobby. We support either one. But like I said, we do use our non-union sites to help if some of our union sites are the ones that are calling out. But they do lobby. They are lobbying because I will share. So in Stanton, we have 2 yards. We have one, which is our corporate office, where Mike and I are housed out of. And then just down the street, 2 streets on Lamson, and we've referred that to our Lamson site, that is non-union, and it's the bigger operation. So we recently went union in this, our Paris operations. And so we do believe that in time that may happen. But in the interim, as I mentioned, if we have maybe that opportunity to adjust our rates. I mean, our trash drivers are making $30 an hour. That's the union rate, is $30 an hour plus benefits. It's a pretty good deal to drive a trash truck. But again, our issue is we're competing with the Amazons and the other industries, and trash isn't as sexy as it is to me, to others. So anyway,
In our district, are we union or non-union or mix?
your site, it's mixed. It's mixed. We service from both. Yeah. Mhm.
All right,
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Julie, how can it be mixed?
Some of the services that we provide, it
Oh.
depends on the different vehicles. Yeah, so we pull some of the services, bulky drivers, others we pull from both sides.
Well, I mean, I thought Brett's question was the trash cart pickup in particular.
Trash cart in particular is union. All the other bulky pickup, deliveries, exchanges,
Oh.
that is non-union, that operates out of Lamson. But we still, if we have drivers call out at our union site, we have our non-union drivers cover those routes. So we still are able to cover and use that same work pool.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Any other questions from the board? If not, thank you very much, Julie. We'll go on to the item number 3 is discuss and provide feedback to the agreed upon bullet point for future agreement with CR&R Environmental Services.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the board is aware that staff has been negotiating in good faith with CR&R for the past 8 months. And we are coming to the finish line here to presenting to you an agreement. But before we share with you and with the public the deal points that we have agreed upon, and here to hear from the board if you agree with those or not. If not, then let us know. We'll go back and discuss with CR&R. So in your staff report is all the bullet points that we agreed to today. And our next step is to present to you a draft agreement. I know there are some items I think district council has mentioned to me that I need to make sure that's in the agreement. I don't have that on the staff report today, but I got to make sure that's in there. But it still has to be vetted through by our district council as well. But the plan was at least give you the first draft of the agreement, get your comments, and then we'll continue meeting to finalize the agreement. Hopefully by the end of this calendar year, by the end of December, we can have a final agreement for you for your approval consideration. So happy to answer questions. Again, CR&R is here to help questions. Also, Nabila's online to answer questions for you.
Do any of the directors have questions? I'm sure there are a few.
I just have a comment. The number 3, so CNR is going to provide the direct mail hangers and knock and talk and flip the lids. They're going to take care of that.
Very similar to what's going on in Newport Beach. Yes.
Okay, good. I like that. Good.
I'll tee it up. I've got a few, so I apologize. 13A3 is the main driver for this amendment. I get that. But with our recent recommendation to not do a 3-cart, I thought that was really the main driver on this amended contract. What else is in there that forces us to amend our existing contract?
Well, we didn't, if we refresh the board remember, we didn't, the board did not approve, the board delayed the 3-cart system.
Right, correct.
The idea, the direction was to give you updates. And the intention is still, we believe we're still going to implement 3-cart system by 2025, but it could change. But that's our thinking right now, that we're going to eventually go to 3-cart system.
Sure. No, I get that. So why are we not amending the contract maybe down the road instead of right now?
I think it's best to have something in place now. I mean, if we have if we approve the contract by the end of this calendar year, we can always come back with more amendments if we need to.
Okay. All right. And then can you walk me through the tonnage versus the flat monthly fee? I mean, I know the difference, but what's that mean to us? There's no dollars or percentages.
Well, the tonnage is a little bit difficult to engage. All we can go is based on past trends. And it's basically, the set rate, you know, just throwing out whatever, it is, $60 a ton. The higher, the increase in our tonnage goes, the more our cost goes up. That's why it's important for us to really focus on using recycling more, using more recyclables rather than trash. Because if our trash tonnage goes down, then our costs go down. Now, on the flip side, we are trying to promote organic waste, right? And so we want that number to go up. So that cost is going to go up as well. So that numbers fluctuates, the tonnage. The flat rate is just a rate that we negotiate with CNR, and that's the cost per unit. That's just a flat rate that we negotiate and come to an agreement with.
All right, and then our, the annual, review that within the 10% average of 33. And now that basically, if I'm correct, that stays the exact same as in our existing contract, but I see this on a new point, so I was confused about that.
I'm sorry.
Well, like I'm looking at the language on bullet point, I don't know, 8, where it says CRR and district agree to continue using the following rate comparison. That language, at least to me, looked the exact same as in our current contract.
It is.
Okay.
We're going to continue with that.
We're just, so which leads me to question, these bullet points, are there other changes to our existing contract that aren't listed on here?
Correct. Not that I'm aware of. Nabila, can you think of anything? I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
No, there is nothing. We included all the bullet points, all the negotiation points in that list.
So, and that's why I asked the initial, I mean, if this isn't a change, why is this on, like, I'm not a lawyer, so I might have missed a word and I want to make sure we're.
I think Scott might have included that because we did discuss possibly other comparison methods
Got
during
it.
negotiations, during various meetings. We thought, what is the best negotiating? Because currently we are the only agency with 2 cards. So I think it was brought up as, is it a true comparison to every other city that has three containers? So that was discussed over various meetings, but then ultimately, because we will be switching to a 3-card system, we decided that within the 10% was the fair comparison.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And yep.
The only thing I wanted to add to that, knew that some of these points were important to the board and to the district. So we just wanted to restate that we weren't going to change those. And then the other one, and my apologies, I've had a crazy week. So I I know all the bullet points because we've been working on this for a year, but the one thing I did want to just restate as Vice President Schaefer was on the committee as well during this conversation, that we did make the change to the term, which was important, that currently it's automatic renewal. And we changed, so we have a 10-year plus a 10-year, it was automatic. And we did change that second term to say by mutual agreement to both parties. So that language is in the amended contract that's being presented to Scott. And Scott, I do have that from our attorney, so I'll be sending that to you when I get back to the office. But we did, that was important because that was a discussion that came up, not to have an automatic renewal, and actually something Vice President Schaefer asked for us to change.
Good stuff. And which leads me into that question, since you just addressed it. So just for everyone's knowledge, so right now we have the previous board agreed to a 10-year contract in 2018, which in essence expires in 2028. But there were 2 5-year renewals by as long as no one broke the contract for cause. Is that the understanding? So 2028 minimum, and then more than likely, unless there was a breach, 2 5 years on top of that. So right now we're now talking about essentially 2033, correct? So an additional 4
Correct. So
years
we're-
off of.
Well, we're keeping the exact term, so we didn't change it. So we didn't add another 10 years. We're going to operate off that. So the first term expires 2028, and then the 2 additional 5 years are at mutual agreement by both parties.
Oh,
So we're not extending it another 10 years. We're going through our current term.
Right. So if I were to clarify, so in theory, we have a 20 and go to 2030, because as Director Echols mentioned, if there was a term and agreement that CRNR violates, we have to give them an opportunity to correct that. And they always do. They
Right.
always correct it. So we are saying, okay, it's going to be 2038. What we negotiate now is that it'll be at least 2033. So it's 5 years less. And then what Julie says, mutually agrees to extend. That means we both have to agree. So if they agree, we don't agree, then we go out to bid on 30.
And that was the biggest language that I saw mute, because before it doesn't say both of us have to agree. It was
It
just like,
automatic.
yeah, so that for anyone who follows and pays attention, that's a big one. So, okay, then the the rate adjustments, I was just, can you elaborate on that point? Because our existing contracts, like every 2 years is, we just did a CPI review and adjustment, but I wasn't clear on what's changing.
So, I'll take that if it's, so currently the agreement is biannual, so it's every 2 years, but we do get increases from Orange County Landfill like clockwork every July 1st. And so what we asked is to help share the burden of the cost. It's a cost that's passed on to the ratepayer because it's a cost for the service. Those are what we refer to as pass-through costs. The landfill rates go up, we have to pay the bill. Those are included in all of our rate structures. So we had requested the board if we could do an annual increase versus biannual. The same parameters would apply. Staff, the board has to approve our rate adjustment. We're just asking to request it on an annual basis, which is common with almost, I would say, probably 99% of the cities that we serve. It was similar when I was with the previous hauler. They're always annual.
So,
And it lessens the burden to the ratepayer too. Let's just say, so for example, last year, well, not last year, I'm already into 2023. July 1st of this year, the landfill rates went up 6.5%. So if you look at that on a 2-year basis, what if in 2023 they go up? That's a pretty big hit to the ratepayer as a pass-through cost for just the disposal portion of the rate. Whereas it's a little easier to take it if it's, like I said, done annually instead of compiled some of those 2-year numbers that they could be big.
but if CPI goes down, whatever.
And same thing, they would all, and it goes both ways. I mean, obviously it goes up and down. They could be high, they could be low, it could be somewhere in between. But anyway, our request was to help offset costs, was that we pass it through annually. And like I said, that is very common in the industry.
And yeah, generally I'm okay with the annual. The only, the board can approve or reject, same as today, right? Okay,
Yes.
all right. And then I think, I'm sorry, everyone, I think I've got one more. The liquidated damages is obviously a big change and I think good for everyone. Well, maybe.
No, we are completely
Yeah.
good with that. We're fine with that.
The only thing in it, how was the number of basically 88 per month determined?
So I use that as an industry, and actually I brought that over, suggested from the previous hauler I worked with when I worked for Waste Management. Use the same analogy as 2 misses per 1,000 residents served. So that's really how the math came out.
Okay, so you're 2 misses per, what was it? 2 misses?
1,000 residents served.
1,000 residents,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So based on what we just reviewed on the
Mhm.
previous item, so last month was 178. We could apply LDs on
Yes.
that. And then 94.
And there's a fee for every miss over the allotted monthly total. The
Oh,
LD,
so if
yeah.
you're at 89, the
Per-
fee is,
It's per miss-
$5
It's per miss
versus-
pickup,
okay,
It-
per,
and it's a lot more than $5.
I'm a simple math guy. I
I'll
can't do
give
big
you Dr.
numbers.
Eccles. I'll
Yeah.
take the $6.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a reason why you want to implement a contract now. Okay, because if we don't, then we don't have liquidated damages. There's a good reason right there.
The
Gotcha.
intent was, thank you, Scott, I'll just elaborate on, that the contract would become effective, but it would just be clearly stated of when we would roll out the 3-cart system. But everything else would go into effect immediately, including the liquidated damages.
Okay.
We would have the date certain, and we would list, I'd say we do general on or before July 1st, 2025, we would implement the 3-cart system, something like that. And that could obviously be changed, but everything else in that agreement would go into effect when the agreement is approved by the board.
And then the ultimate rate and all that, that's still being discussed, I assume.
Yes.
Okay, obviously that's one of the more important things, so we'll get there. And then All right, I'm wrapping up, but speaking of which, so, per our existing contract, we have a right to annual review, audit, all that, and I know I've brought it up a couple of times. We've been in the process with that yet with, Mark? Okay. Okay. And then when will we get, where I'm asking to get the favorable nations thing within the 10% before we review this final deal? And is that on track to get?
Nabila has.
Nabila is aware, yes, we'll present that to you. She's in the process, right? I think we said we're gonna do it in November, right, Nabila? I think the CAC was gonna.
I will be done with it in October. I think CAC in November and the board in December study session.
Okay, so before we get to any sort of even like that's going to be obviously but to include the CPI increase that was approved by a few on here. Okay. Sorry, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm ready, but go.
just a couple quick things. On the parameters for replacing carts, residents are going to request replacing their carts by making such a request to CR&R. What do we get in terms of a follow-up that's been done? I mean, do you then tell Nabila or staff that, hey, these people replace? It's been a bad week. I lost my employee last week. So we get notified that these people have requested replacement carts, because I know over the last year, probably the most interaction I've had with ratepayers is about replacing carts. Mr. Newland, for example.
Yes, I think the major concern with that is that they were gonna get a smaller cart, right? And that's why they were kind of upset.
Well, they wanted a bigger cart.
Right, they wanted a bigger. So the way the new contract is, if they want to stick to their 96-gallon cart, or they want to go to a bigger cart, they have that option to do that. Yes, we get reports from CR&R when those carts are delivered. It's part of
Okay.
the data we collect in our performance measurements. The goal is to have the carts delivered within 7 days.
Okay, yeah, I just, when you read this, it was just resident calls CR&R and it's done. I didn't think that was the case. I think you did let us know so that we, or you guys more than us, can verify with the ratepayer that they got their new cards. Okay, the only other point I had, Bob, was I want to commend the whole process on the rate adjustment when it comes to COLA. To solidify a 5% cap on COLA, I've dealt with a lot of organizations and COLAs, and being an employer myself with COLA. I think the latest numbers from the government this week were 8.9%. So I congratulate both parties, us and CR&R, for putting that 5% cap. I mean, we don't have to give you a 5%, but if inflation continues on its path, and who knows, to be capped at 5% is appreciated from my point, very much appreciated. And I just wanted to make that comment. So thank you. That's it.
A couple questions on the replacement of carts. Director Schaefer said it's, that's the call he gets the most. When we go to the 3-cart system, I think there will be a huge interest in that process, and I expect a lot of confusion. I would lobby for some district assistance in that regard, so that we can meet that 7-day every time someone calls. If CR&R's having personnel problems at that time, I can envision that is going to be a nightmare. So having the district yard and or a person to assist what will potentially be angry customers if they if we have this requirement and they know about it and they're not serviced. Anyway, that's a suggestion. I was on the board when we negotiated, an extension of this contract. And we had two choices. We could go out to bid or we could negotiate a contract. And I think two of the deal points that made me comfortable with negotiating that contract, three, was the cost of going out to bid. And I think that we had determined that cost. Do you remember what that was? Okay, and it seemed like it was substantial. Anyway, substantial is in the eyes of the beholder. So what we did was we negotiated two deal points. We negotiated I think the lowest price for organics. And we negotiated that 10% thing in the middle. We stay in the middle. And that made me comfortable, to agreeing to the extension of the contract. We had, I have a couple other questions. I haven't yellowed them out like Director Eccles.
Use mine.
Yeah, they're probably the same.
Exactly.
I have an interest in the 5% CPI cap. I have a pension and all the pension systems use a 3% cap. So I don't know how the 5% was arrived at. It just seemed a little high to me. But having it on an annual basis will get rid of the concern, having it on a 2-year basis, that was a very high amount. I was going to say astronomical. It was a high amount. It was sticker shock to a lot of our CAC members of the board and anyone in the public that was aware of it. I need a little more explanation on the proposed rate. Does this mean that we won't be charged on a tonnage basis for the recyclables, the organics?
No, we still do. This is just because the way we pay our cost of CNR is directly to CNR. Most cities have the residents pay directly to CNR, right? But we're a little different. We pay them, and so it's based on our structure on the flat rate in the tonnage. When you take those in consideration, and the number of homes that we service, it breaks down to 2416. So that's not so. Again, remember, because they don't see that monthly rate on their assessments. It's an annual assessment, but that's how we engage with other communities and the public. It's easy to understand. Well, how do we compare with other agencies? So we would break it down on a monthly basis.
Okay, I think that's most of my questions. I had a question though on the CNR district agreed to the following rate comparison. The net to hauler rate, is that important to us when we do budgets?
No, it's not, because we look at the total cost. The net to hauler rate is just to try to compare apples to apples with other organizations.
Okay, so what I was going to suggest was instead of having it, I think Julie said in July, we move it back if in fact it had an impact on budgets, and it doesn't appear to. I think those are most of my questions. Do any of the directors have any more questions?
I have one more.
Can I?
I saw one of them wasn't marked off.
Yeah.
President, I did add some language. So to your point, you're working on your budgets. So I get the July 1. So that's the effective date, but we submit our data to the district for review in April or May. And I can't remember what date. So you would have it in advance
Okay,
before you're approving your budgets.
okay,
And that's similar with even most cities. Everyone does their fiscal budget July 1st. So they all get their annual CPI request in April or May, and then that way they have the data.
okay. Thank you.
I saved a good one maybe for It's the contamination fee penalties, if you will. So under 1383, I mean, the state through their various things has the right to fine all of us for blah, blah, blah. Do we know what those fines are?
We do not know what those fines are. I take that back. It is very clearly written out in the regulations about cities that don't comply. And if you weren't doing enforcing to make sure that residents are putting their stuff in the right 3 separated containers. And I want to say from memory, it's hefty. It's like $100, then $500. And so really, when it comes to us for the district, and I know all the other haulers are taking the same approach, we don't want to fine anybody. Really, the whole thing is we want to just make sure we educate, tag the containers, send them an email with a letter saying, hey, we really need you to move this stuff from your trash can into your recycle or your organics. But as you mentioned, the state requires it. They have to see that every city or every sanitary district has those fees in the agreement so that they are taking it seriously. So if someone just refuses and they say, I'm not doing it. I'm going to just use a trash can every week. I'm not going to use an organics, or I'm not going to use a recycle. Those would be the ones that we would report back to the city that we're going to charge them that contamination fee.
And does the fee come from, and warnings from you or our staff?
Those come from us. If the city wants to, or the district wants to take it to another level, by all means, we had talked about that, and Scott would follow the district's current policy for code enforcement, and they would fall under existing categories and fines.
So if I get a $25 fee, it's coming from you and I've got to pay
And you
you,
don't,
not
yes.
the sand district.
And then we get 80% of those revenues.
But you then distribute that back.
Yes,
Okay.
because we have to send backup and photos that show the contamination.
And so our thing was that if a resident gets 3 contamination fees within a 12-month period by CNR, then we would step in and start using administrative fines. And those are a little heftier. Those are like $75 first offense, $150, $300. So that gets a little heftier. So if they don't get their attention after 3 contamination fees, then maybe the administrative fine will get their attention. I mean, it's all about changing people's behavior, and we know unfortunately it's got to come with the pocketbook. That's how they change people's behavior.
So being that we don't even know what the state fees or penalties or whatever are, I'm hesitant about putting this into our amended contract. The actual numbers, I'm fine with the warnings and all that stuff, but maybe these are too little, maybe they're too much, so why be handcuffed? I think the board, when the state finally figures out whatever they're doing, we can pass a policy that says we're going to fine you $50 or 100 or 10 or 5, whatever.
We can always come back and change it. The enforcement doesn't have to go into place in 2024. And so, we can start using the $25 fine. And if we're seeing it's not changing people's behavior, then we come back to the board and say, hey, look, we need to increase the fees, because it's not changing their behavior. We can always come back to you and do amendments.
No, I understand that, but we're not going to be fining anyone until 2024. I'm not sure we want the actual numbers in this revised contract.
What's the concern if we do?
Because then it's readily known and now we're just guessing. I don't like to guess and have that in a contract. To go back and change a contract, I'd rather have the board sit up here in a year and a half from now and go, hey, you know what? We don't want to do any fines because the state hasn't said anything. Or, you know what? Geez, the state's going to fine us $100 per ratepayer. All right, we got to make that up. I just want that flexibility.
I believe the state's going to want to see our contract, and they're going to want to see how are you enforcing this? What's your fines?
So I'm saying we could keep that.
Don't put anything in here, then they can say, well, where's your enforcement program?
Oh, I'm saying we could keep that, but take out the numbers. And then we just say, yeah, after the 3rd offense, you escalating fines may occur. So it's my suggestion, but
Well, Scott, you said that this potential finding process would start in 2024.
By SB 1383, we have to start enforcing by 2024. They're expecting cities to issue citations.
So I can see the big problem is we're not going to roll out the 3-cart system until 2025 or mid 2024.
Yes, it'd be rolled out December 2024 with implementation in January 2025.
So I'm wondering. I think that those state criteria will go into place and we won't even have the third cart in place.
Contamination fee, it still applies for a two-cart system. What we don't want people to do is throw their food scraps in their trash or their trash in the food scraps. That happens, then we have to give them a contamination fee. So it's.
That
still-
happens in 2024 because
Yeah,
you already
it's
have a
still two-cart
program for
system or
organics.
three-cart system. Doesn't matter what cart system, you still have to apply it, enforce it.
Well, I think it's going to be a whole new concern when the three-cart system gets rolled out. Anyway.
One comment, Bob.
Yes,
What
sir.
we're talking about. So in 2024, CNR is going to start looking at the contamination, right? So we'll get that started then, right? And it doesn't go into effect until 2025 with the third cart.
Third cart 25, yes. So, because again, the idea is, the law is they don't want organics contaminated. And so that you can contaminate organics on a two-cart system or three-cart system. You ensure that you're separating your waste. That's what they want us to ensure the residents are doing.
But per 1383, because the district client today with 1383, because it allows for a 2-container system if you're sending your mixed waste to a high diversion facility that's at 50%. Again, the reason for having to switch to 3 carts is in 2025, it has to be a 75% high diversion facility, which as of right now, the state has not approved any MRF in the state of California to be at that level yet. And so I did speak with Kara Morgan. She's one of the heads at Cal Recycle, and she said they're hoping by maybe August of 2023, as they're going and doing these facility audits, to determine if anyone at that point is at high diversion. But so just to restate, 1383 is in effect today. And with these route reviews, or if the driver identifies contamination, we have to start that process with education. So for example, if we see someone with a ladder sticking out of the organics cart, that's contamination. We have to tag it. We have to leave a note. We have to start taking photos. So we have to start doing those route reviews and what we kind of refer to as lid flipping, looking for contamination today in the organics container. So we are going through that education process right now. But as Scott said, come 2024, quite frankly, the city could start charging that today. You don't have to wait. The state requires the enforcement by 2024, but some cities are already starting their enforcement now. They're not going to wait because they're starting to slowly start changing behavior now before they've got the state breathing down the necks.
And so I just wanted to clarify, we can issue fines now, but we do not have to.
No, you're not required by the state, but you can start anytime you want.
And that kind of goes back to why are we putting this in here unless we're going to start fining today, the actual number. So, but thank you for the clarification.
Unless there's any more questions on this, I think.
I just had one question. Actually, I was just wondering, are we communicating with the city on what we're doing so that they have a better understanding too?
Yes, we are communicating with the city on this.
We are? Okay.
Mr. President, could I ask a question? Alan Burns,
Sure.
Scott, or whoever, if we're going to do the COLA and we're going to limit it to 5%, we're going to do a 5-year CPI study so that we don't have to go back out to our, our ratepayers under Prop 218. We'll only go out and send out the annual notice. Is that going to be, are we going to amend the contract twice? We have a rate now, and then we're going to give CPI for landfill and things like that. And then we're going to have a 3-cart rollout, and there'll be an increased cost for that, I suppose. How are we going to do that with the 5% and the study we want them to do so we don't have to keep going back to the doing Prop 218 hearings? If anybody knows what the thought is on that.
Well, we would, again, if, kind of answer that question. So if we're going to roll out the 3-cart system in 2025, we're gonna want to know what that rate's gonna be for, from CNR. And then also we can, go back to look at our budget. Can we absorb it in our budget? If we can't, then we'll have to do a Prop 218 hearing. But you're right, Ellen, if we're gonna do a Prop 218 hearing, then we definitely want to do a 5-year rate increase. And then we're gonna have to use some assumptions, what those CPIs are gonna be. And in the past, we usually use about 3% of a COLA. So, the 5% is just a max. So,
Right. Okay, thanks. I guess we'll work our way through that. I know the laws got some language as to what we have to have for that CPI 5-year rolling increase. So we'll get that out and see how it all fits in.
We recently did that with two other cities that I work with. We just did the 5 years. So when we have our next meeting, we can walk through the language. But many cities are doing the same thing, not having to go back to doing the Prop 218. It's very costly and getting it at once. But again, trying to start estimating with your start point, just do the 5%, although we would only apply the actual CPI and as approved by the board. But at least the 218 is there and approved by the board and the ratepayers. If there's no protest to the hearing, at least you have it established, but you still would just go back and charge the actual.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that when we do the 3-year, the three card system, if there's extra costs in that's in the Prop 218 hearing, so we don't have to go back for that also.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I think the active discussion probably knows this come back before the December. So that, you know, we better continue to improve our understanding of the whole.
Yes, that's our plan, to have several more meetings, either with the solid waste committee, the study session meetings, have more meetings before we bring the final draft to you for approval consideration.
Okay.
So this will be the only meeting you'll be discussing the contract.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, then let's move on to receive and file the legislative report. Gina, is that you?
Further, we're just here to answer any questions you may have on this staff report.
If there are no other questions, Gina, you're off the hook.
What? No, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I said if there's no other questions.
You hadn't let me. What is the Whippies Act? I hadn't seen that one before.
I think it's the Wipes Act.
Well, that's what that, it's just Whippies Act,
Miss Bell.
but it's the thing about the what do you call them?
Flushable wipes.
Flushable wipes, thank
Yeah.
you, that are really not flushable. Isn't that what that is?
It is. I think it's an acronym. That's why it has 2 P's in it.
If I
but-
remember right, it has to do with labeling of the containers, and they can't say flushable anymore, and
Correct. So that passed in California
it
and now
did
it's,
pass, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
now the federal
okay.
or Congress is looking at it too.
That's all I had, Mr. President.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 5, inspecting district assets using their own technology.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as you know, a regular and routine inspection of assets is best practice to ensure assets are performing at their optimal levels during the full use of their life cycle. And as you know, we do use some technology to inspect our assets, like our closed circuit television that we use to go into pipeline to inspect the condition of pipes. We've used sonars before to determine the pipe thickness of force mains. You might recall we had that one technology, was the PICA technology, which that electromagnetic sensors. So we have used technology in the past. The one issue I think that's is challenging is when we deal with confined space entries, particularly with wet wells. When we want to go down and do inspections on our wet wells, we have to, do confined space entries, or the Eldon force main that's inside the Mesa Drive Bridge. Again, it can be dangerous, so we do have to do confined space entry. So we're looking at what's another method of inspecting, using technology to inspect our assets by at the same time keeping our staff safer. So we came across this drone technology called Flyability Helios 3, and this drone was specifically made for inspecting utilities, and it's widely used in Europe to inspect wastewater facilities. Fortunately, as we did some research, we learned that there was a sales office in Huntington Beach that can do a demonstration on this technology. And so we scheduled a couple demonstrations. The first one was on July 7th of 2022 that we sent the drone inside the Eldon lift station. Attached are some pictures to that inspections. And then we invited them back on August 29th to inspect the pipeline inside the Mesa Drive, the Eldon Force Main pipeline. And during that demonstration, the drone did get snagged on a nail inside the bridge. And so we had to perform confined space entry to go retrieve the drone. Fortunately, the demonstrator said that he would come back at no cost to finish the inspection. So he did that on September 26th. What I'm going to show you here is a video I think this is a video from the August 29th inspection, but you can take a look at this. This is the drone itself. This is what you're seeing with the drone sees.
We get to see it getting snagged.
Don't know.
A Caltrans project.
That's how I'm going to kind of get the gist on how this works. As you say, it can be very effective. The downside of this technology, it is not waterproof. I thought if that pipe ever ruptured, we could have sent the drone down there to inspect it. However, you can do that, but just can't get it too close to water because it's not waterproof. That's the downside to it. The other downside is obviously it's very expensive to buy this equipment. It ranges between $50,000 to $75,000. Then that doesn't include training and buying supplies, most likely batteries. So it is quite expensive. But although I do believe the technology is beneficial, so my recommendation is we don't buy the drone, but at least we can rent it out, and it is available to rent. So we can rent one out for like $3,000 a week, and we can inspect all our wet wells if we want to, again, inspect the pipeline. So it is a useful technology to use. And I think we should keep this in consideration when we're inspecting our asset when it has to deal with confined space entries. So this is just really just a receive and file report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead. Okay, if we rent this object, do they supply the worker to use it? Or-
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Do they cover themselves if they snag it on another nail? I mean,
No, we'd probably have to go in and get it ourselves if that happens. But what the operator learned is that what he didn't do the first time, what he should have done is do what they call a reconnaissance fly. You do the reconnaissance fly to see if there's any hazards. And then he would do the flight. So he admitted that's what he should have done. That's why I got stuck.
I agree with that. I mean, 200 grand for a toy. I mean that loosely, but that seemed like a lot of money.
But it was 75,000 is the most. I don't
I
know.
thought the total was like 189,000
So I
for
don't know where that.
right here, 189,600.
Oh, no, that's when you add all three of the costs. It's just one particular drone. I think that's if you add all three.
This is light package, premium pack. Oh. Okay, so you have the option of
Yeah.
one of the packages.
Right.
Okay.
Is that based on daily rate or? Is it a weekly rate
The $3,000 a week? Yes,
per week?
per week, or it's 3,000 a week, or I think it's $7,400 a month if you want to go monthly.
Thank you, Mr. President. How many, in a perfect world, money being no object, how many do we need? How many would we utilize?
At least, if I could think of half our lift stations, about 10 of our lift stations.
Okay.
Big enough, put the drone in there. Could be more, at least.
But we could you were saying we could purchase one and it would accomplish what we need to have done, or we need more than one?
Well, one would be fine.
Okay. And then how often under the rental deal would we rent one?
Once a year.
Oh, once a year.
They can do-
Director Perry asked my question. He stole my thunder. So good question.
They can do the 10. I mean, you say we have 10, a week should be more than enough time to
Absolutely.
do. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Then, yeah.
By the way we go.
All
Um,
right, thank you.
So have you done any analysis of what it costs us manpower wise to do those confined space entries? Well, what it does though is it takes away from somebody from the cleaning crew. So that is a significant cost if it's a person or two per day. Well, it's only once a year.
It's 3 people, confined space requires 3 people by law. You have to have 3 people.
Okay, so that's a significant reduction.
But I was gonna say the same thing, except when we only use it once a year, rent one
Yeah.
and they come with the operator.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. In the report, it said the problem was the Eldon splashing. I thought there's 2 inputs, 21st Street and Mesa's pump station come in. And we had odor concerns in the neighborhood, and we eliminated one of those. We put a downspout down into the water, and that eliminated that splashing and that odor. I thought we were gonna do both. Am I right?
Downspouts in Eldon. We do have the downspout in there.
You have one downspout, but I think you need 2.
There was another, you're right, and I can't remember the correct, but there was another downspout we installed that I can't remember off the top of my head what station it was, but.
Anyway, I'd be interested to know whether why there's water splashing in there still, because that's where the odors come from, but, and the cost for manpower. Any other questions on that?
Thank you.
A very good report. I suggest we bring that operator on that can operate that, especially if it doesn't like a bath. The last item then is we'll move on to item number 6, receive and file the report on the Eco Expo update.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to turn this over to Delani Minway, who was the brainchild of Eco Expo and brought it to life. And as you may be aware, it was extremely successful. So I'm going to give her all the kudos and glory and have her share with you the success of this program.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I might have been the brainchild, but I could not have done it without my muscle. So I just want to front load and thank Gina and Angela for being the boots on the ground and for running this entire operation. They put in great detail into the preparation for this, but this was absolutely an all hands on deck event. It was very successful in our eyes. We have polled the public to see what day and time would work best for them. And we landed on a great number of results saying that Wednesday between 3 and 7 p.m. worked well. And it proved to be accurate because the number of students and school age attendees that were present that day was on point. So I'm just going to share with you some of the highlights from our event for those who weren't able to join us. I'm going to minimize this real quick so you can see.
2 on the left look great, the 2 on the right, not so much.
Depends on which one's your left and your right.
that side.
We had members of our CAC present who were part of our check-in table. Gina and Cindy Brenneman were wonderful, greeting every attendee that came in. We were clocking every person as they arrived. We also took their name and their email address so that we could add them to our subscription list. We had our representatives from our wastewater crew who demoed our siphon demo. And it was perfect because we had our first attendees that walked in the building and they had issues with their own plumbing at home. And with their plumbing experience and background, Brian was able to help resolve some of those issues. So that was great.
Well, thank you for that fine report.
Next, our finance department were the heroes of our succulent demo. We wanted to exhibit our drought tolerant landscaping and promote that. So they created succulents for all of our attendees. They were able to decorate their own succulent with decorative rocks, and so many people were so complimentary of it. They thought that that was the best giveaway. Next, we have pictures here of 3 members of our CAC. We had Chair Elodie Katz, we had Rosemary Chora, and Annette Watson. They were fantastic in providing information about the CAC. We initially ran off 25 sets of copies of our CAC applications. We ran out. We had to print another 25 and we ran out again. So we heard a lot of great questions. People were really wanting to engage. So I think that this is a great way to involve our community and they were happy about it. This is our wastewater crew and Andrew, our engineering tech. Andrew was responsible for sharing information on our sewer inspection rebate program, which a lot of residents and participants had no idea about. Our wastewater crew, Jesse and Steve, were manning our table to inform the public of what should and should not be going down your pipes. So they talked about fog, they talked about roaches, how to eliminate the problems with roaches. They also gave away their really neat sewer slayer coloring book to all of the participants, and the kids got a real great kick out of it. I think what's even better is that Steve actually did all the comic work in that coloring book. So it's great to have a personalized item to give away. We also partnered with the city of Costa Mesa and CR&R to talk more about trash. We wanted to make sure that the city was involved so that all residents within our city were addressed, whether multifamily, single family residents. We wanted everybody to be covered. And it was fantastic. The city were great participants. We were glad to have them here. CR&R was able to bring their 2 sample versions of the carts so we could be more definitive about what goes in which cart. And a lot of questions were answered. So thank you, CR&R, for participating as well. This is just a quick snap of what the rooms look like. We had 206 RSVPs, but we actually clocked in 130 attendees of our event. That's the most that we've ever had in our building for an event that we've held. So we were very excited about the turnout. And I think everyone left here feeling very educated, absolutely with a lot of wonderful swag, sustainable swag. So they were happy about that. And they're looking forward to next year. So I just want to thank everyone again for your support with this, and we're looking forward to bringing it back in 23.
Good job.
Any questions by the board?
I had a comment. I just want to thank the
Getting over it.
staff for putting this together because I couldn't attend and I thought this was a great walkthrough for me. And I really appreciated how we went out to the public and talked to them and presented what we have and our building itself. So thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to oral communications and director's comments. Director Echols?
I just thank you and great event. And as always, you guys always pull it off. So keep it up. Really appreciate you and everyone enjoy the rest of the week.
I have one last comment. When the drone was being used to inspect the Eldon pump stations, run the sewage treatment plants, when we had openings like that in a hole, we had to have safety rails on the side. So I think you should check to see whether, what, I think those safety rails would be needed so that somebody doesn't fall in the holes, especially because you've got to move the net away, to get into the thing. So I think Mark would know. I think that's an OSHA requirement when you have an open hole, either manhole or lids to a station. So, anyway, that's my input.
I just have one quick thing about the expo. Art and I were talking that day, and I think I told you this. I kept thinking 3 to 7. Who's going to show up at 3 o'clock? It was perfect. Great. It was absolutely perfect. To get your brain working a little more too, Nolani. Not that it needs more work, but this thing was so successful, and we've talked over the years continually about the people we need to reach about sustainability and recycling, are not the dinosaurs like us, it's the kids. I don't know what we could do with the school district to do a day-long expo and have the schools bring their kids over. I know they have transportation issues and all that. That's always the biggest thing. But maybe we do an eco expo on the road. Maybe we could put together some kind of smaller program where we could go to the schools with the things that we really want to hit the kid. I mean, it was a long time ago when I was in school, but when we didn't have to watch or, if we had a thing to go to, not a field trip, but anything that distracted, I think that would be to get out of the classroom. Yeah. I think that might be something we could think about, some kind of traveling expo. And we, again, there's all this education that we need to be doing. Just an option.
Well, and maybe part of the town hall meetings. Because a lot of people showed up and I think a lot of people showed up for our town hall meetings, the educational meetings, but I think maybe the two events could be combined.
As a follow-up, great idea. So well done. But as a follow-up and a suggestion, if we can look into this, I understand you had to get all the field trips. As much as I love those things, those days have probably passed to come here or wherever. But if we rotated it, say to the 3 high schools, Estancia, Mesa, and Harbor, they've got the facility to put us in a gym or out on the field, whatever we wanted to do. And that's going to cover the teenage kids, to Director, Schaefer's point. They're a big target audience, but also the junior high kids are across the street. And at Mesa, they're at the same one. Estancia is a little bit different, but then you could include the junior hires a little bit easier. And the school district, I'm sure, would be all in favor of hosting these at their various sites. So good idea.
I
I had a comment. You're addressing me?
No,
Okay,
I was going to make a comment on what
okay.
I'm saying. I was the activities director for 36 years, and we put on assembly schedules where the whole school could come down, not at all one time, but by 15-minute segments. Use the gym at Estancia. You could use the elementary school at California and T-Winkle because they have a gym there. But I mean, if we did it and the district approved it, it'd be up to each principal to set up a schedule for maybe one day. We take one day a month or something to get all the schools covered. I think it'd be really, it'd be a big job for you to get everything over there and organized, but you could get over there like at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning, have the assembly like right before lunch, then they go to lunch right afterwards. But well, we did that all the time.
I
So we
had a too. A long time ago, we did go to the classroom when it was simple to do that. And one of us would go assigned to whatever classroom and talked about waste, talked about sanitary district, gave them an idea of what we stand for and the difference of us being with the city and not with the city. So that was really worthwhile. I would like to comment too, that I think that Mike's idea is a great one. We'd have to start early though, because it's hard to get on the superintendent's calendar to be able to go to a school. And there's a lot to it, but I love that idea because we'd be getting the children at a certain age that we need to talk to them. And they take home all the material to their parents. So it's a two-way street. Thank you.
Can't wait to talk to 7th and 8th grade boys about solid waste. Big hit.
Well, we can help them with their definition.
Exactly, redefine.
You may have been there, done that, but the four of us, we were those.
Exactly.
Set it up, it's over like in 45 minutes, in and out, and you're packed up and come back. Okay, no problem.
If there's no further questions or comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
How come